Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Easy 11 Plus live lesson with me and with Dimitri. Dimitri, you're a bit wet. Have you been outside? I hope that's what it is. Yes, it's just wet from the balcony. It's been raining. Anyway, fantastic. Oh, my microphone. There's no microphone. Here it is. Everything's going wrong and Dimitri's away. Well, anyway, we'll try that again. There we are. A microphone is a very useful thing when you are streaming on YouTube. You think I'd have got these things worked out by now. Socomba Alalado says, "Hi, Master Robert." Master Robert, wow. I have a joke. What do you call an old snowman? And that's not very seasonal. Summer's about to kick off. An old snowman. I've got no idea. What do you call an old snowman? I can't wait to find out. Okay, anyway, in the meantime, while we wait, let's get started. I should center myself, that's it. Let's get started with today's lesson. So this week we're going to look at a multiple choice English paper from Manchester Grammar School. These are fantastic papers. They're really difficult. I strongly recommend them to everybody preparing for the 11 plus because they teach fantastic skills. But my advice is take them slowly and think about them carefully. Don't do them timed in a hurry unless you are actually preparing for Manchester Grammar School or another difficult multiple choice test and you're in the very last run up to your exams. Otherwise, use them slowly and thoughtfully and try to learn from them. Manazidas says, "I live in Manchester." Well, this is for you. Okay, let's cut in to the lesson. Now, I have not looked at these questions at all, as I've made a habit, sometimes by accident, but actually I think it's useful. I haven't prepared at all. And so you're going to see me think through these questions, work them out in real time, and I'll share with you what I'm doing, what sort of techniques I'm using. Perhaps I'll make the odd mistake just to remind you that adults too are just human. Okay, so use of English. In questions 1 to 4, which of the 4 alternate words do you think is closest in meaning to the word in capital letters? Okay. Choose a letter which you think answers the question best, then write your choice of letter in the box provided. Here we are, here's a box. So, acquire. You know what, I won't do too many of these because this is basically just verbal reasoning and, in fact, I'm going to skip them entirely because this is just a verbal reasoning question of a very familiar type and we practice those in plenty of other videos. Okay, punctuation and grammar, this is more like it. In each question, there are 4 possible alternatives to choose from labelled A, B, C and D. There we are. We can see, how far does my finger go? That far. We can see A, B, C and D there. We need to choose the letter which you think answers the question best. Then write your choice of letter in the box provided. Good. Which of the following sentences should finish with a question mark? Must you register your details with the librarian? Well, is it an instruction? If it was an instruction, it would be you must. When we swap those around, and English is not the only language to do this, when we swap them around, it becomes a question. Must you register your details with the librarian? So that should finish with a question mark. I've got the answer already. That's definitely it. I'm going to make my pen a little bit less chunky because it's going to be ugly and awkward to write with. My handwriting is ugly enough already. No, that's the same. Robert. There we are. Excellent. That'll do. Super. So it should definitely be A. I'm just going to go through the others quickly. She wondered if reading was allowed during lunchtime. So she's wondering something. But this is not grammatically a question. This is telling us that she was wondering. It isn't a question such as, is reading allowed during lunchtime? So this would just be a full stop. That's a full stop, honest. Take your books back to the library when you finish. So that's an instruction. So that would have a full stop or an exclamation mark. An exclamation mark would imply that it's quite angry. You must stay silent in the library. Just an instruction. So the only question is A. The one to think about, the common mistake would be B. Because it is talking about a question, but the sentence itself isn't a question. I'm delighted to see so many people choosing A. Fantastic. Right. Onwards. In the sentence below, which word is a verb? So, echo. So let's look through these. Within can never be a verb. You can't within something. But something can echo. You stop making so much noise. Your voice echoes. Difficult. You can say you echo, but that would be a bit strange. Appeared, hard for that not to be a verb. It appeared in front of me. Moment, I moment the it moment. No, I don't think so. So I reckon it's going to be appeared. Now we look at the sentence. For a moment, something appeared in his eyes. An echo of the child within, perhaps. So appeared, the thing appeared in his eyes. That's what it did. It's an action. It's the action word here. So it is a verb. That's C. Super. How many adjectives are there in the sentence below? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Okay. It's a good thing it's adverbs, because spotting adverbs can be very tricky. As the young man, so man is a noun. What kind of a man was he? He was young. So young is one. As the young man came over the hill. So none of those words are adjectives. None of them are describing anything. He came over it. It's all just a simple statement. The first thin blowing of rain met him. So the blowing of rain. So that is what you might call a nominalized verb. In other words, it's a nominalized verb. So normally blowing would be a verb. It is blowing. But here it's the blowing. The blowing. It's a nominalized verb. I think you'd call that a gerund if you're being pedantic. Anyway, it's the blowing, so it's a thing. The first thin blowing. Okay, so thin is definitely an adjective. Now, does first describe thin or does it describe blowing? If it describes thin, it's an adverb, because an adverb describes an adjective. So, for example, you could say the barely ready meal. So ready is an adjective describing the meal. Barely is describing the adjective. You couldn't say the barely meal. It's barely ready. So that barely there is an adverb. So is first describing thin or is it describing blowing? So what happens if we take thin away? Does it still make sense? The first blowing of rain met him. Yes. So first is describing blowing, not thin. That means it's another adjective attached to this noun, I think. So I'm pretty sure there are 3 adjectives here. C. Pretty sure. Which of these sentences is punctuated correctly? Wouldn't you like that? I asked. Right, so let's look at wouldn't first of all. Why does wouldn't have an apostrophe? So there are 2 reasons essentially why words have apostrophes in English. One reason is because somebody owns something. For example, Robert makes a mistake. It is Robert's mistake. Robert apostrophe S. So it's whatever is doing the owning followed by the apostrophe and then the S in most cases. So Robert's mistake. The other reason is because something has been taken away. So for example, how is this paper? Oopsie daisies. How is this paper? It's flying all over the place. Now, how is this paper? It's difficult. And that means it is. But we've taken away the I, and so the apostrophe goes in its place. This is called a contraction, where we take a longer thing like it is and we contract it, we squish it together, and then we put the apostrophe to show what we've missed out. So in what's wouldn't short for? It's short for would not. What have we taken out? Yes, we've taken out the space, but we don't put an apostrophe for that. We put an apostrophe for the letters that we've taken out. And from would not, we have taken out the O. Wouldn't. So the apostrophe goes between the N and the T. So that leaves us C and D. A and B are both wrong because they've got wouldn't wrong. Remember, the apostrophe replaces the letter or letters that have been taken out, not the space that has been taken out. Okay. Wouldn't you like that? I asked. We can say these aloud. Let's say them exactly as they're written. Exactly. Wouldn't you like that? I asked. That's C. And then D. Wouldn't you like that? I asked. Well, this is something that's asked, and it's a question, and it has a question inflection. Wouldn't you like that? Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. It has a question mark. It's D. So that is the correct answer. There's another small mistake in C, which is here. The comma really ought to go before the quotation mark. Not a big thing, but worth mentioning. Which connective is best to complete the sentence below in the space indicated? The library is a sanctuary in which to read, research and study. It is not a place for socialising or playing games. Okay. In addition, therefore, despite the fact that the library is a sanctuary in which to read, research and study, despite the fact that it is not a place for socialising or playing games. In order to get the right connective, you need to think about whether the two halves of this sentence agree or disagree with each other. So this part here, the library is a sanctuary in which to read, research and study, means that you shouldn't be noisy and difficult there. You should be reading, researching or studying. And the second part, it is not a place for socialising or playing games, means that you shouldn't be making noise and being difficult there. The same thing. So these go together. Therefore, something like despite the fact that doesn't work because there's no contradiction here. The library is a section in which to read, research and study since it is not a space for socialising or playing games. What does since mean? Since means this is the reason. So it doesn't really make sense to say it's a place to read and research and study because it isn't a place for socialising or playing games. You could say it is not a space for socialising or playing games because, or since, it is a sanctuary in which to read, research and study. But this sentence is the wrong way around for that. Therefore, or in addition. So what about therefore? The library is a sanctuary in which to read, research and study. Therefore, in other words, for this reason, it is not a space for socialising or playing games. So you should be reading and researching or studying. Therefore, don't make lots of noise. That makes a lot of sense. What about in addition? A. So in addition says that these are two different things that go on top of each other. So one thing about a library is that you should read, research or study. Oh, it spotted my thumbs up and done that automatically. So funny when it does that. I didn't turn that setting on, but I don't mind it. Go on, there we are. So you should read, research and study. Also, it's not a place for socialising or playing games. That isn't wrong. That isn't wrong. In addition, could be correct here. But therefore makes a lot more sense because it shows there's actually a connection. Because you should be reading, researching or studying. For that reason, you shouldn't be making chaos. So B is the best answer. I spent a little while on that one, but I think it's quite interesting. It's how you think through the structure of a sentence. You start by thinking, what do the halves mean? And then you think, what relationship do they have? Are they joined together in a list? Do they contradict? So is it this or this but this? Or does one build on the other? If one builds on the other, as is the case here, which order is it in? Is it A, therefore B, or is it B, therefore A? You have to go through those thought processes in order to understand a question like this. When you don't need to, it's because you've internalized those thought processes. You do them automatically, but you're still doing them in one way or another. How many words should begin with a capital letter in the sentence below? Okay. It took Diana. So the first letter should have a capital letter because it's the start of the sentence. Diana is a name, a proper noun. So she should have a capital letter. Thank you very much. More than 2 hours to get to the Bridgewater Hall in the rain last Thursday. Well, Bridgewater is clearly a name. In the rain last Thursday, and days of the week take capital letters. But there's one that I need to look at, which is here. Do we capitalise hall or not? Well, would it make sense if you didn't to the Bridgewater Hall as opposed to the, I don't know, the Viaduct Water Hall? I guess, but it would be more natural for this to be written as a name. It is a particular venue. It's called the Bridgewater Hall. So I think we should capitalise H as well. Now I'm cheating a bit because I know, the Bridgewater Hall is a famous place. I know that it's called the Bridgewater Hall. But it's also, it has this in common with lots of other, particularly classical music venues. The Wigmore Hall, for example, the Cadogan Hall, and so on. I think it's called the Cadogan Hall. It took, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No others. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's option C. Great. I think they're quite interesting. Let's move on. What's next? I haven't looked at these at all. The only one I looked at all was the very first question, which we skipped anyway, just because it was in front of me when I was starting things up. Okay, let's have a look at this. So this is poetry comprehension. Terrific. And we're given a passage. So you should always read the text before you answer the questions. And I haven't seen this text before, so let's go through it quickly. Workings of the Wind by James Berry. Wind doesn't always topple trees and shake houses to pieces. Wind plays all over woods with weighty ghosts in swings in thousands swinging from every branch. Wind doesn't always rattle windows and push at walls. Wind whistles down cul-de-sacs and worries dry leaves and old newspapers to leap and curl like kite tails. Wind doesn't always dry out sweatshirts and blouses. Wind scatters pollen dust of flowers, washes people's and animals' faces, and combs out birds' feathers. Wind doesn't always whip up waves into white horses. Wind shakes up tree shadows to dance on rivers, to jig about on grass, and hanging lantern light to play signalman. Wind doesn't always run wild, kicking tinny dustbin lids. Wind makes leafy limbs bow to red roses and bob up and down outside windows and makes desk papers fly up indoors. Lovely. Very nice. Never seen that before. Right, here we have some questions. And because I've been cunning, uncharacteristically cunning, I've got the text here as well that we can refer to when we need to. How is wind being described in lines 1 to 2 when we are told that it can topple trees and shake houses to pieces? Is it mischievous, destructive, jolly, or energetic? Okay, let's have a look. Wind doesn't always topple trees and shake houses to pieces. Ah, dear, I've got a bit of fluff in the corner up there from not enough light. Let's see if I can do something with this. Does that improve things? No, it doesn't. Hang on, I'm just talking about this up here where I've got that dark bit. It's very annoying. Now I'm going to have the dark at the bottom, I know it. No, don't worry about it. Oh well, we'll survive. Okay, I need to get another light, clearly. Wind doesn't always topple trees and shake houses to pieces. Wind plays all over woods and weighty ghosts in swinging thousands. So in lines 3, 4, 5 and 6, wind is very playful. It's playing all over woods with weighty ghosts in swings in thousands swinging from every branch. But in lines 1 to 2, if it was toppling trees and shaking houses to pieces, it would be very violent. Right, let's look back at the options again because I can't remember them. Mischievous, jolly, energetic. Well, it's not jolly. It's doing something very, very, very violent. It is destructive. That looks good. Could mischievous or energetic be better? So we're weighing up options. Toppling trees and shaking houses to pieces. There's nothing mischievous about that. It's much more violent than it is mischievous. If someone goes around destroying houses, that wouldn't normally come into the category of mischief. Energetic or destructive? Well, certainly it's full of energy, so it is energetic. But is energetic or destructive the better word for describing this? Toppling trees and shaking, clearly it's destroying things. It's destructive. So although energetic is right, B is better. And this is something that a lot of people have difficulty getting their minds around when they're studying for comprehension exams, because it's natural to think that your job is to find the right answer. And the flip side of that is to assume that the other options will be wrong. And so if you find the ones that are wrong, you'll be left with the one that's right. It doesn't work like that, especially not in tricky exams. Quite often, very often, I would say, you've got more than one option that is correct. But a question that's been well said will have one answer that's clearly best. And your job is not to find a right answer and then say, but it was right, how can it be marked wrong? Your job is to find the best answer, because anything that isn't the best answer will be marked wrong. So it's B, destructive. By the way, I think there's an answer sheet for this down below or somewhere else, so you can check whether I agree with the examiners on these. In which lines of the poem is it suggested that wind can be though it isn't always useful to us. Okay, so can be useful. 3 to 4, 7 to 8, 13 to 14 and 21 to 22. Let's check them quickly in turn. So 3 to 4, plays all over the woods of weighty ghosts. No, nothing about usefulness there. Nothing about utility is a nice word for usefulness. The utility room. The usefulness room. Lines 7 to 8. So 7 to 8, 5, 6. Oh, that's the 2 on the left. Wind doesn't always rattle windows and push at walls. No, nothing about being useful. Rattling windows and pushing walls, or not doing that. Neither is useful. It's either annoying or not annoying. 13 to 14. Wind doesn't always dry out sweatshirts and blouses. That's it. Because that's useful, right? You want the wind to dry out your sweatshirts and blouses. So, yeah, it's going to be that one. What's the other one? 21 to 22. You should always check the other options just to make sure there isn't something better, because as I just said, you can have more than one right answer, and one of them best. Wind shakes up tree shadows to dance on rivers. Well, that's beautiful, and it does bring us pleasure, but it isn't, in the strict sense of the word, useful. So the answer is option C. Relatively easy, that one, I think. Relatively easy. Line 24 describes the way wind makes the lantern play signalman. What do you think is meant by this? I don't know. We'll have to look at the poem to check. Notice I'm always going back to the poem. I'm not thinking, what do I know? Can I remember it without looking? I'm going straight back to the poem, because I may not have fully understood it or correctly understood it the first time through. And I'm not smart enough to hold all this poem in my head. Lantern light to play signalman. Okay, so that's line 24. In fact, let's just do the full caboodle and let's put an underline there so it's easy to find. Okay. Wind doesn't always whip up waves into white horses. So we're talking about the sea here. Wind shakes up tree shadows to dance on rivers. Okay, now we're in rivers, it's still water. To jig about on grass, and hanging lantern light to play signalman. So this is things the wind shakes up. It shakes the trees, making shadows that dance on the water. It jigs about on grass, so I guess the grass goes whoosh, 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 and hanging lantern light to play signalman. So it makes lanterns that are hanging wobble to and fro like a signal. So I suppose that could be a signalman like on a railway. It could be a bit like a lighthouse keeper, someone who gives a warning of obstacles maybe. I don't know, let's have a look at the options. As the wind blows the lamp, it gleams like a disco ball. This isn't about it gleaming, it shakes it up. And the grass jigs and things dance. So the context of this section is all about things waving to and fro, not about them becoming like disco balls, lovely as that would be. As the wind blows the lamp, it flashes. No, that's not about it swaying around. When the wind blows the... Oh, hang on. So, interesting. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Because I thought, no, it's not really flashing. But look at the other options. When the wind blows the lamp, it falls down and breaks. No, it absolutely doesn't say that. When the wind blows the lamp, it blares out music. Goodness me. It's neighbours you don't want with lamps that do that when the wind blows. No. So it must be B. Even though I didn't really interpret it as communicating in code, I understood it as something waving around, like someone waving a lamp as a signal. The option they've given, B, is the only one that's compatible. They've just interpreted the poem differently. That the wind makes the lamp flash. Maybe it blows it to and fro and there's something in front of it, so it seems like it's flashing. I guess. I'm not totally convinced by it, but it's better than the other options. And again, this emphasises the point that I've already made a few times and I'm probably going to keep making because it's really, really important. Your job is to find the best answer. You need to get rid of the idea that multiple choice comprehension is about finding the right answer. Sometimes there's more than one right answer, and so you have to choose the best of those. Sometimes, as here, I didn't really feel that any of these was quite the right answer. But B is definitely the most right, or the least wrong, and therefore it must be the answer. It's just a difference of opinion I have with the examiner. I think their interpretation is perfectly valid. It just isn't the one that I initially went with. That's all right. You're allowed to disagree with me. What do you think is meant by wind makes leafy limbs bow to red roses? Lines 27 to 28. Right, let's start by looking at the options and seeing if there are any that are definitely wrong before we check the text. But we never jump to the answer without checking the text. The flowers force the leafy branches to bend before them. That is not right, because the wind makes the limbs bow to the red roses. It isn't the flowers doing it. We know that from what's right in front of us here. The wind makes the branches burst into flower. I don't think that is right, because this looks as though it's saying it makes the limbs of the trees bend over towards the roses. But it could just about be talking about how they, it could just about be saying this if you really twist the word bow, and it is a poem. So let's leave that for the moment. The wind ties the leaves into bows that look like roses. It could be, but I doubt it. The wind bends the branches down towards the flowers respectfully. D looks by far the most likely. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to look at the passage 27 to 28 and see, is it D? And if it's clearly D, then I'm done. Let's do that. So 27 to 28. So we are down. Oops, we are down here. Okay, wind has leafy limbs bow to red roses. And bob up and down outside windows. Okay, so the limbs bow, and then bob up and down. So it could just about be B or C. I don't really believe in B. That's too much of a twist. It could, in theory, be C. But it makes the limbs. Didn't notice that, you see. It makes the limbs, so the branches, and it says leaves. I didn't notice that it said leaves. This isn't about leaves, it's about leaves, about the branches. So D was clearly right anyway, but in fact it's demonstrably right because of those things. So nice comfortable one in the end. Which of these statements, by the way, I'm not going to do the whole paper today. What time is it? It is, okay, it's nearly past. So I'm going to do another 5 or 10 minutes max and then call it a day. And then I'll probably come back to this next time, do a bit more. Okay, tell you what, just looking on here. Yeah, let's do the one about the poem structure. And then let's do some of the next ones. Or maybe we'll finish the poetry competition. I don't know. We'll do something. It's a fun paper. I find this interesting. Creative Hour says Robert did the 11 plus and passed it. That's why he is teaching us. I think if passing the 11 plus qualified one to teach it, there'd be an awful lot of people teaching me the 11 plus. So, oh wait, there are. I don't. I've said this before. I don't even know whether I passed the 11 plus. I carried on from a junior to a senior school, and I simply have no recollection of whether they maybe sit an exam. Probably they did, but I just can't remember. So I don't know whether I sat the 11 plus. Which of these statements about the poem structure do you find most convincing? The lines on the right reveal a more pleasant and playful side to the wind. So the left-hand ones being darker, more serious, or just not fun, and the right-hand one's more playful. Okay. The lines on the right reduce the power of the wind. The lines on the right make the poem too long. Okay, I know it isn't going to be C, and that's because they're not going to include a "this poem is rubbish" option. It just doesn't really fit. It's too subjective because different people could disagree about whether it's too long or not. It's kind of meaningless. You couldn't get a consensus answer on that. It isn't the kind of thing they ask in comprehension tests. The lines on the right echo the lines on the left. Okay, so echo implies that they are similar, the same or similar, but quieter and repeated. Bum, 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 bum. That's an echo. We know that isn't the case. The lines on the left are often contradicting what's on the right. I mean, just a quick example. At the very beginning, we got the wind toppling trees and shaking houses to pieces, and then we got the wind playing. So that is an echo. That's very different. That would be like if I went boom, and what came back was wee, boom, wee, 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 boom, wee, wee, wee. Not really an echo. That's like a coin going down a metal chute or something. Okay, the lines on the right are a little more pleasant and playful. So when you've got two options left, and they're difficult, you need to first ask yourself, don't go to the poem yet, look at the options and work out what the key difference is. So line A is saying that the wind is pleasant and playful, also it's more pleasant and playful. So it's implying the lines on the left are serious, the lines on the right are pleasant and playful. And B says the lines on the right are less powerful. So you've got more power, less power. So is it serious versus playful, or is it powerful versus less powerful? Okay. So the first one is definitely serious versus playful. But could also be powerful and less powerful, because shaking houses to pieces takes more power than swinging branches. Rattling windows and pushing at walls. And here it's whistling down cul-de-sacs and worrying dry leaves and old newspapers to Leeton Cull. So that's definitely more playful. It might be less powerful. It might well be. But it could be a wind, the wind that rattles windows and pushes at walls. The same wind with the same power could do these things here. So I'm not convinced that this is less powerful. Drying out sweatshirts and blouses. That's very nice, very helpful, but quite serious. And then it has fun. And these things here definitely aren't less powerful. They're just different. Yeah. Okay. Kicking tinny dustbin lids. Twisting the branches of a tree down. Similarly powerful. So I don't think there's a good argument that the wind is less powerful on the right. Because that isn't consistent. Sometimes, but not always. In fact, often not. Whereas A, I feel, is very consistent. That the left-hand side are more serious, whereas the right-hand side are, jollier, windly activities. No, that isn't correct English. Right, let's have a glance at some of these. Or maybe all of them if we have time. What are we now? 32. Yeah, we can probably get through these. Okay, which of the words below is closest in meaning to scatters in line 15? So, obviously you're human, you do look at the question before you look at the text. That's normal. And looking at the options quickly, I feel that spreads is by far the most likely. If you scatter something, you spread it out. But I'm going to check, because I might have missed something. So it's absolutely fine to have a hypothesis, as the scientists would say, to have an idea of what you think the answer will be, but you still need to test that hypothesis against the text. So line 15, scatters, here we are, you can see it here. Wind scatters, pollen dust of flowers. So it's dust, it's the pollen from the flowers, it scatters it, so it throws it all over the place. So yeah, that spreads. I've got no problem choosing spreads here. None of the other options really make any sense at all. 19 to 20 is an example of alliteration. But what is alliteration? Aha. Okay. Well, you may know the answer. This is one where if you know the answer, you can just choose it. But let's imagine that you don't know the answer. So let's look at the text, 19 to 20. So where are we? I think we need a different colour. We got enough red on here. Let's go with the blue, because blue is, there's no reason, let's just go with blue. Okay, I've forgotten the line and all that kafaff. I'm terrible. I'm a terrible teacher. 19 to 20 is an example of alliteration. What is alliteration? Here we are, 19 to 20. Let's give it a big circle, because why on earth not? Wind doesn't always whip up waves into white horses. Okay, we got a lot of W's there, haven't we? A lot. Anything else going on here? So we got lots of W's, so that's definitely like this. Alliteration is a comparison made using a like or as. There's no sign of that. Alliteration is using powerful verbs. Okay, whip up is a powerful verb. So there are powerful verbs here. Powerful verbs, yep. No like or as. Is a use of animal imagery. I don't think there's any animal imagery here. No animal injury. Oh yeah, white horses. Okay. So they've made life very difficult. We've only ruled out one option. B, C and D do all appear here. So actually, okay, you need to know it. So the answer is that it is the repeated sounds at the start of neighbouring words. Whoa. I'm just going to clarify this a little bit, because their definition is correct but not complete. So neighbouring doesn't necessarily need to mean right next to each other. It means close enough to each other that you would notice the effect, basically. It's subjective. So it's repeated sounds at the start of words that are very close to each other. Furthermore, alliteration, annoyingly, only applies to consonants. So it's repeated
consonant sounds at the start of nearby words. And that would be a slightly fuller definition. So if you've got lots of words beginning with A, you're out of luck. It isn't alliteration, but that is a story for another day. Lines 10 and 22 use the same punctuation mark. How should it be spelt? Well, we don't need to look because they've told us what it is, the hyphen. They've written hyphen lots of times here. Okay, I'm not going to make up a waffly explanation. Sometimes you just need to know the spelling of a word, and it's this one. Look at the apostrophe use on line 18. I just find this use of on for lines a little bit strange, but lots of people do it, so I guess it's right. I would always say in line 18, but maybe that's just me. Anyway, on line 18 makes me think of something, running above a line like that. Anyway, they don't care what I think. I am just a lowly YouTube teacher. And combs out birds' feathers. I can't remember what the question is. I'm brilliant at this. Why has this apostrophe been used? Oh yeah, the apostrophe birds' feathers. We spoke about apostrophes earlier. Two main uses. One is a contraction. Got rid of a letter. Have we got rid of a letter here? Bird. Could it be birdsy? And we've missed out the E. No. It's clearly a possessive apostrophe. The feathers of birds. Is that one bird or several birds? If it was one bird, the apostrophe would go, what am I doing? What are you doing, Robert? Who knows? If it was one bird, the apostrophe would go there, between the D and the S, because you have the thing that owns a thing, and then you put the apostrophe. So if it was one bird, it'd be bird apostrophe S, feathers, but then you would say a birds or the birds, feathers, normally. This is birds, several of them. So it's birds and then an apostrophe. And you wouldn't say birds is, so there isn't an S afterwards. That's actually a pretty good test. Would you say birds is? And if you wouldn't, you don't put an S afterwards. So to show that there are many birds, well, you'd have many birds without an apostrophe because it would still say birds. To show that the feathers belong to a bird, no, we just spoke about that. It can't be a bird. To show that the feathers belong to many birds, yes, or at least more than one. Oh goodness me, it's getting fuzzy behind me. That's the trouble, the dusk is falling outside, the light is changing, and the light settings that worked with my green screen at the start of the lesson no longer function, but I'm not going to mess with it. To show where the reader should take a breath. Well, just for fun, let's try that. Wind scatters pollen dust to flowers, washes people and animals' faces, and combs out birds' feathers. That's what would happen if we use those apostrophes for taking breaths. I don't think so. To show that the feathers belong to many birds, option C, that's the right answer. I know it's being a bit silly taking all those breaths, but there's no substitute for trying it out, seeing what works. It isn't stupid, it's clever. It's a smart thing to do, to be absolutely certain, and to realise that written language is essentially, I would generally say, a proxy for spoken language. In other words, it takes the place of spoken language on the page. That's the best way to think about it, even if it isn't always true. Which of these active verbs gives the most violence to the wind? Okay, shakes, worries, whistles, or washes. This is a bit funny because this could be quite subjective. What you perceive to be violent could differ. But this paper is no doubt been set by a smart person, so let's assume that there is a clear answer if we are smart enough to work it out. Shakes, worries, whistles, and washes. So shakes in line 21, what's going on there? Wind shakes up tree shadows to dance on rivers. So it's shaking the trees enough to make their shadows dance. I don't think that needs to be a massive shake though. It could just be, the little branches at the end, the outermost branches. So I doubt that's it. Worries, line 10. Whistle line cul-de-saxon, worries dry leaves. So worrying, that doesn't mean disturbing. It's a verb that's almost always used about, actually it's generally used about canine animals, dogs and wolves, taking hold of something with their teeth and going, and sort of twisting it to rip a bit off. That's worrying something. I think that's more violent than the wind swishing around a few branches. So I reckon that one is beating our previous one. So therefore it can't be shakes because I would always choose worries over shakes. Whistles in line 9. Okay, whistles in line 9. whistles down cul-de-sacs? Well, it could be a powerful wind that makes a whistle, but whistling is not inherently violent. That's a very, yes, not a very classy choice of tune. Anyway, that's whistling. It's not inherently violent. Let's try a violent whistle. That's probably blowing your earphones out. It still isn't very violent. I don't think a whistle is going to be violent, not compared to worrying something. Washes in line 19. I bet you're glad that's over. 16. Pollen dust to flowers washes people's and animals' faces. Yes, you may be an inveterate soap dodger, and it may take violence to make you clean yourself. But the cleaning isn't itself violent, not unless you're really struggling to get away. I don't think washing is a particularly violent word. So I think worries wins. Now, I'm not completely happy with this question because how violent the shaking is depends on how strong the tree is and how much force it takes to shake it. If it's a really hefty tree and it's being swished around and creating these shadows on the river, that's pretty violent. But a toothed animal trying to rip chunks out of something is, I think, more directly violent. It isn't just strong, it's an act of violence, of doing harm to something with force. And so I am pretty certain that B is the answer that they want. But I think this is a tricky one. Tricky isn't necessarily bad. This is why it's a difficult paper. Okay, I said I wouldn't go any longer than 40 minutes and it's 7:42, so I've broken my vow. So I think I should call it a day there. And well, let's go back into center focus. You know what? I should do a... Right, this is where I realise I haven't planned a tip of the week, so I just have to make something up on the spot. Brain whirring. Okay, I have a tip of the week for you. You will obviously do lots of revision as you practice for your exams, and revision will sometimes mean returning to papers that you've done before. But how you return to a paper that you've looked at in the past makes an enormous difference. And what you absolutely shouldn't do is try and remember what answers you chose last time and see how many you can recall, because that won't teach you anything. All it will teach you is which answers you chose last time. When you come back to old papers and repeat them, which is a really, really important part of revision and extremely valuable, you need to try and wipe your mind clear. And you need to try and do them as though you're seeing them for the first time. And try and work out every answer from first principles. Because practicing for 11 plus doesn't mean learning answers. It means learning skills. And you need to come back and work on those skills freshly, as new. And then when you've done the paper for the second time or the third time or whatever it is, then ideally you'll pull your old answers out of a folder where you've kept them. Oh yes, be organised. And then you'll compare. And then you'll see what you've learned. You'll also see in which places you've slipped back a bit, because that always happens somewhere, almost always. And you'll be able to learn from that. But whenever you repeat work, make sure to repeat it as though you're doing it for the first time, because that's how the really effective learning will happen. Okay, great. I have to be honest, I'm really hoping that there aren't any questions, because I would love to go away and have my dinner. What's the most important subject for the 11 plus? Yeah, I guess it's full time. There isn't one. Certainly English and maths generally have more or less the same weight in terms of marks, so they are both important, and you need to work on both. Work on the things that you're weakest at, but also make sure that you keep working at the things that you're strong at, because you need to make sure that you get the maximum marks for those things as well. Robert, what do you have for dinner? It's going to be a chicken stir fry. Where is Demetra? This is my last riddle. There will be more next week. Thank you. I was worried that there weren't going to be any more there. What can you catch but not... Oh, I didn't hear the answer to the snowman one from earlier, by the way. Tell me what the answer to the snowman joke was. Maybe repeat the question too. What can you catch but not throw? A disease. Sure, of course it's a disease. If there's anything else, they're wrong. Selena says, Robert, am I Portuguese? I'm going to go with yes, because I have absolutely no idea. How on earth would I know the answer to that? Manazi says, what happens if you're stuck with 2 relevant answers in multiple choice questions? We looked at some of those earlier on. There can be questions where there are 2 relevant and arguably correct answers. You need to work out which is the best. And that means also practicing getting into the mindset of a question setter, which is a big part of what practice is about, and part of what watching my videos is about. It's trying to understand why they would have given you those 2 things and what skill they're testing, and that can help to see you towards the correct one. Creative Ara says, I haven't finished with this one because this is accidentally hilarious. Creative Ara says, when is your birthday, Robert? And I stopped and thought, and I just remembered because I'd entirely forgotten. My birthday's tomorrow. Happy birthday to me. You didn't do the thumbs up thing. Come on. Streaming program. That's it. Thank you. It's my birthday tomorrow. I'd totally forgotten. That's what happens when you get old. Anyway. Right, well, because it's my birthday tomorrow, I really feel I should be doing something great, like eating dinner, instead of, what am I talking about? It's wonderful to be talking to you, but nonetheless, dinner calls. So fantastic to be with you here. Let's turn the music on as the lesson fades away into the distance. Yeah, I should just stop talking. I should go. Have a wonderful evening. Happy birthday to me, and I will see you next week, probably for some more of this paper. Bye-bye.